what are some of the reasons? What are the top reasons that travelers go to other countries to get procedures? Cosmetic surgery is number one. Dentistry is number two. It's become a huge business for people to get their teeth together. And listen, I don't want to come off as the vanity police, but with some of these things, you definitely have to, kind of weigh the rewards and the risk. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we start out and say thank you to everyone who's been checking out the podcast. As always, it's greatly appreciated. If this is the first time that you are listening to the podcast, we say welcome, and thank you for tuning in. As always, we ask here at the People's Voice if this information that we cover on the podcast is helpful and enlightening, and you feel that it has substance and can be shared. We do ask that you share the information, and you can do that by subscribing to the podcast. We are on all podcast platforms, and of course, you can reach us on any of our social platforms as well. And we always put out a new video for the podcast at 3 p.m. on YouTube. So thank you, subscribe, and share. Thank you. Today, I want to talk about medical tourism. And I want to talk about this because recently in the news, there was a story of a group of a group of American citizens who decided to take a trip to, Matamoros, Mexico, which is a city in one of the 31 states. Is it Tempa? I don't want to mess up the name. Excuse me. I'm sorry. But Matamoros is the city in Mexico that they were traveling through, and they unfortunately were encountered by what's being reported, and I'm not there, but was being reported by members of a drug cartel, and it seems like it was mistaken identity, and the individuals were shot. They drove from the United States, I believe they were coming from South Carolina, into Mexico. They went over the southern border of Mexico. I think they went to Brownsville, Texas, somewhere, one of those border towns down there. And anyway, as they crossed into this city, they were shot. And unfortunately, two of the individuals lost their lives, and the other two have been rescued, I guess, because after they were shot, apparently they were kidnapped as well. But in any event, two of them have been rescued. Unfortunately, two died. The reason I want to talk about this is because it has been reported that the reason that these individuals had taken the trip is because at least one of the identified individuals was going down there to have surgery. Apparently cosmetic surgery, apparently going to seek a tummy tuck. And that prompted me to want to talk about medical tourism because it is, first of all, it's big business, okay? I mean, it's literally turned into billions of dollars a year for many countries who are providing medical services to individuals who are seeking medical assistance. And, this is not in any way, I don't want to make this sound like this is any lesser than the medical services that U.S. citizens would receive in this country, because as I'm reading through the reports, there are obviously areas where the care is not as sufficient as some of the facilities in the United States. But all in all, if you vet out the right areas and you do your due diligence, the level in terms of the services that are provided are very comparable. But what I want to do is talk about medical tourism, kind of give a definition of what that is, and then I'll go into some of the details about it, so you have in at least a little bit of information. As always, especially when these type of topics come up, I make it very clear I am not a medical professional. The purpose of this podcast is for information and consumption purposes, but as always, I encourage you to do your own research as well, especially in this particular matter when we're talking about medical care and medical procedures. But that's what prompted me. I went through all of that to say that's what prompted me to want to talk about this today, because of the incident that recently took place with 4 U.S. citizens who had traveled to Mexico to have a cosmetic surgery done. And unfortunately, they were targeted by a drug cartel, shot. 2 of them were killed and two of them were killed and the other 2 have survived. And as of this current report, have been safely returned to the United States. So medical tourism. What is medical tourism? And I'll be quite honest, I've heard of people going to different countries to, have various medical procedures done. Didn't realize that it was a whole industry, right? And, the one thing that I love about doing this podcast is that it requires me to do research and then I uncover new information, which, is something that I really enjoy doing. So anyway, medical tourism. Let me give a definition of what medical tourism is. And then from there, I'll kind of break it down into, which areas are getting the most traffic, costs, things of that nature. So medical tourism. And there are several definitions out here, but I chose to take the definition from the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which I'm sure during the pandemic, many of you have heard of the agency several times, but they actually do a lot more work beyond just the, administering the warnings for COVID-19. So, but this is from the CDC. This is the definition for medical tourism. So it says here, medical tourism is when a person travels to another country for medical care. It's estimated that each year millions of United States residents participate in medical tourism, as I stated. Medical tourists from the United States often travel to Mexico, Canada, as well as many other countries in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. But that's what medical tourism is. It's basically when a person travels to another country for medical care. And it's not just isolated to, residents of the United States. Obviously, people from around the world travel to other places. There are people that travel to the United States for medical care. But that is what the terminology is. When a person travels to another country for medical care, that is considered or designated as medical tourism. Now, as I stated, did not realize how huge of a industry this is, and did not realize the different level of services that are being provided through medical tourism. Now, this is occurring many times, and I want to keep it specifically to residents that travel from the United States to other countries, because as many who are listening to this podcast know, medical costs, healthcare costs in the United States are astronomical. Matter of fact, I did a podcast about this last year, if you want to check it out, where I talked about, you know, what many people don't know, one of the number one causes of bankruptcy and debt in the United States is medical care costs. People literally go into debt and have to file bankruptcy just to treat some of their ailments, or if they have a medical emergencies, because the cost in the United States for healthcare is astronomical. But that's one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on this today in terms of United States residents, because of the lofty healthcare costs that occur in the country. So, as I said, and I was reading the definition from the CDC, millions of Americans travel each year for procedures, medical procedures. Now, these procedures range from everything from dental care down to, hip replacements. And matter of fact, I'm reading here from there's an organization called Patients Beyond Borders. And they do a lot of work in terms of collection of this type of data, this type of information. They also are a resource for individuals who are considering traveling for medical procedures. You can kind of cross-reference and get a lot of information from their site. But on their site, they list they list some of the top destinations in the world for medical tourism. Okay. And so right here on their site, it says that some of the top destinations in terms of medical tourism are Costa Rica, India, Israel, Malaysia, Mexico, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, and the United States. So these are some of the top destinations in the world, okay, for medical tourism. And now, let's not in any way get this, misconstrued. All forms of tourism, whether it's for medical reasons or entertainment, leisure, it is just another word for money, okay? So, it's not, I don't want people to hear the term and think, oh, well, it's for making sure that a person's health is at its top and they get the best medical care. At the end of the day, it's about money when you're a tourist, right? So it's just that they've coined this phrase, medical tourism, but at the end of the day, you're traveling to another country to spend money. Now, the thing about this is that why are people traveling to other countries to get medical care? Well, as I stated earlier, the cost for medical services in the United States is very high, right? And these countries that I've just these countries that I just talked about, many times they have comparable services or even better in some countries because of the advancements in their medical capabilities. Because despite what many people may think, the United States does not hold the patent on all medical procedures. There are many countries that have advanced in terms of their study and application of medical, in terms of medical care and health care. So I don't want, people to think that, why would you leave the United States? Well, there are plenty of other countries that also specialize in various areas of healthcare. But let me get back. So the reason why people are leaving other countries generally, okay, is for the cost. Now, again, there might be times where it's because a certain country specializes in certain procedures, but generally it's because of cost. So, United States citizens, where are they traveling and why are they traveling? Okay. So, the first reason why they're traveling is because of cost. Matter of fact, let me play this clip from, this is from the New York Post, and they had a story on here from Health Insiders, kind of talks briefly about the different cost levels in some of the procedures. And so I wanted to play that so you guys can hear that, and then, we'll go from there. So.
Many Americans are traveling to Mexico for a deep discount on the pricey procedure. Forbes reports a root canal in Mexico is $247, a savings of 80.63% off the $1,275 price in the United States. Dental crowns, $500 in Mexico compared to $1,164 in the U.S. According to the CDC, the most common procedures Americans are traveling abroad for are dental care, cosmetic surgery, fertility treatments, organ and tissue transplantation, and cancer treatment.
And as you heard there, and just going back in terms of how they laid out some of the top procedures that many Americans are seeking, cosmetic surgery and dental surgery are top of the line. And as you heard in that first piece, where the reporter was talking about, and that's some Health Insiders again, they talked about the Forbes report that on average, the cost of a root canal, okay, in the United States is almost $1,200. And you can go to Mexico and get that same procedure done for almost 80% less, okay? So this is what's driving people to travel to these countries to get these procedures. But I wanted to play that so it can kind of lay out some of the procedures that are done. So again, what is being done and why are people seeking this out? Well, again, the first reason most people travel for medical tourism is cosmetic surgery. And in the case where we just had these four U.S. citizens who were shot and killed in Matamoros, Mexico, this is a complete clear example of that. It was reported, and I shouldn't say clear example, but it has been reported that the reason they were there was for one of the passengers to get a tummy tuck, right? Cosmetic surgery. But what are some of the reasons? What are the top reasons that travelers go to other countries to get procedures? Cosmetic surgery is number one. Dentistry is number two. It's become a huge business for people to get their teeth together. And listen, I don't want to come off as the vanity police, but with some of these things, you definitely have to, kind of weigh the rewards and the risk, right? But I'll get into that in a second. So cosmetic surgery is the number one reason most people travel for medical tourism. Dentistry is number two. Cardiovascular or transplants for hearts, number three. Orthopedics, joints, knees, back, hips. I should say not back. Hips, knees. Oftentimes sports-related reasons. Cancer treatments is huge because, cancer-related cost here in the United States is astronomical. It's astronomical, especially for ongoing treatments. It can really get expensive. So that's another reason why people often travel for medical tourism. Reproductive, as you heard in the piece there, fertility treatments. A lot of women, especially as they get older, of course. And again, let me just stop. This is not a medical podcast. I am not a medical professional. This is for information and consumption only. But in terms of fertility treatments, sometimes if women have a tough time conceiving, or as they get older and they decide maybe they want to have a child, sometimes fertility treatments and services are needed for that to happen. So that's another reason why. Weight loss is a big one. Going over to have, the tummy tuck or the lipo, things of that nature, and then other scans and tests and other various procedures are part of that. But those are the top reasons why most people travel or participate in medical tourism for healthcare savings. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit to kind of give some of the reasons what medical tourism is, and kind of what are some of the factors that kind of relate to that. Now, when you travel to these places, right? If you decide to go to travel for or participate in medical tourism, there are some precautions that are recommended that you take in order to assure that you are not only, going for your procedure, but you want to make sure that you're going to an area that's safe, that provides comparable medical services, or I shouldn't even say comparable, but safe medical services, because, traveling to another country to have a procedure done and then traveling back home, obviously that's a huge risk because of just not the distance, but if the procedures for support in case you have an emergency are not the same. There's a lot of different factors, but let me talk about some of the ways that you can minimize that. And I'm getting this again from the CDC. They kind of broke down some of the things that you should do prior to traveling, and then also once you are to have decided that you've selected a facility where you want to go. First thing they say here is how to minimize any risk. First of all, they recommend that you get a pre-travel consultation. And I'll read directly here from the site. It says, if you're planning to travel to another country for medical care, they advise that you go see your healthcare provider at least 4 to 6 weeks before the trip. And they recommend that you do this so you can discuss general information about your current state of health, also any information that you need to understand about traveling with any preconditions that you have, and also traveling back once you have made a decision to go forth with the procedure, because there are some precautions that you have to take, right? Obviously, if you have certain surgeries, it's probably not recommended that you just jump right back on a plane. Pressurized cabin, it's a lot of factors that go into that. Don't want to go too deep into that. But one of the things that they recommend is that you get a pre-travel consultation with your healthcare provider just to confirm what your current status is and any precautions that you need to take traveling to and from. They recommend here that you obtain international travel health insurance, which I didn't know much about, but basically that covers you in the case that you require a medical evacuation back to the United States. Now, this is kind of a perfect example. That's probably not the word that I should have used, but this recent incident with the 4 United States citizens is kind of an example of why you may want to get international travel health insurance, is because if you do have a medical emergency, there is a cost to it. Again, it's a sad story that this has happened to these individuals, but there is a lofty price tag that's going to be attached to the individuals to have them brought back to the United States, especially I believe one of them are still injured, so they had to be evacuated back to the United States, and they're currently receiving treatment. So there's a cost to it. Travel healthcare insurance in this case, international travel health insurance in this case, can help to subsidize some of those costs. So again, this is something that they're recommending. They also recommend that, before planning vacation activities, make sure what activities are permitted before the procedure and after the procedure. Excuse me, because again, depending on what procedure you're going to do, because a lot of times, not a lot of times, but sometimes people take these trips not only to get their surgery done, but then they also decide to turn it into a vacation. Well, if you just got a tummy tuck, you probably shouldn't be swimming in a pool. Again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just using common sense here. So this is why they recommend that you get a pre-travel consultation so you can find out what you can and can't do pre-surgery and post-surgery, or post-operation and pre-operation before you travel to another country. I'm just going to kind of go through the last bit of it here. It says maintain your health and medical records. You want to obviously bring copies of all your medical records to kind of show your provider in the other country of any preconditions that you may have, or any other lab tests that may be related to what you're going to do. More information that they have, the safer it is for you. And, of course, it's less of a risk for them when they're providing a procedure for you. It says pack a travel health kit. This includes any of your prescription or over-the-counter medicine. So if you're going to be in another country and you're on, high blood pressure or diabetes or hypertension medicines, things of that nature, and you want to make sure that you have all of those with you as well. And make sure it's enough, obviously, to last you for the entire trip. It also says get copies of your medical records from the destination. So, you want to bring your medical records that you have, but you also want to bring back the medical records that denote or that speak specifically about the procedure that you had. So you can have those just in case there are any complications, or if you need follow-up procedure that you decide to take when you're back at your home country, specifically, I'm talking about our residents here in the United States. And then it says also you want to research the healthcare provider and facility. As I said, Patients Beyond Borders is a good recommended resource to find out who are some of the reputable companies. You can also do that by, if you know individuals who live in Mexico, you might want to reach out to them. Of course, you can do tons and tons of research via websites. But you want to do research about not only the healthcare provider, but also the facility to see if it's an accredited facility, because, a lot of times, I got to stop saying a lot of times, often when these procedures are done, many people are seeking to get the procedure done at the most minimal cost possible. And sometimes they bypass some of the requirements that health facilities should have, because each country is different, so their laws and their guidelines are not always the same. And you might go to a facility that's not accredited, that doesn't have any kind of oversight, trying to save a couple of dollars. And remember, not only are you out of the country, but your life can be on the line, even for the most minor procedure. Okay, don't think just because, hey, I'm going to get a root canal, or I'm going to get, a set of veneers, or whatever people do now, that, it's just a minor surgery. Anytime somebody is going into your body for anything, it can lead to a complication. So you want to do the research before, and then always arrange for follow-up and care. You want to identify where you'll be staying immediately after the procedure, right? Well, is it the same day procedure, or is it an overnight procedure? Where will you be staying, after the procedure is done? How long will you be staying? You want to always arrange follow-up care. And then it says before you travel, you want to make sure that you can get any needed follow-up care in the United States. So again, if you're having the procedure done, you want to confirm that your follow-up can be done in the United States, right? You don't want to have to get a procedure and they say follow-up for you for this procedure. You have to come back to the country of destination to get follow-up care, because, at that point it can get very costly, because again, remember, many people that are traveling for medical tourism or participating in medical tourism, they're traveling to cut down the cost, because the cost, again, for medical services can be astronomical here in the United States for the most minor of procedures. And, it can be costly. And I also wanted to know, it's not just to save money, because many southern border towns, like in down in Texas, where the population has, ballooned, a lot of times there's just not enough doctors or nurses to support the individuals down there. So a lot of times, especially in those southern states, individuals will go over into Mexico just to have basic routine checkups, because they're just not enough doctors that can support the amount of individuals that are in those areas. I mean, Tijuana is a perfect example as well. Tijuana, Mexico, where there is basically they're calling it a boom in terms of medical services, because it's accessible right from California, but a lot of people in those southern areas, Baja California, as you go through Texas and New Mexico and those individual places, a lot of those southern towns, and when I say southern, I mean southern of the United States, closer to the border of Mexico, they just don't have the resources in terms of enough doctors and nurses and healthcare facilities to support those individuals. So a lot of times those individuals as well head over into Mexico and other Central and Southern American areas to have certain procedures done. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about medical tourism. Like I said, it was spurred on from the unfortunate case of the 4 U.S. citizens who were shot and then kidnapped in Matamoros, Mexico. And, it was, like I said, it was noted that one of the reasons why one of the individuals was there was to have a medical procedure done. It's reported that it was a tummy tuck that the individual was going to have. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I do hope that information has been helpful, and that you share that information with your family and your friends. And of course, I'll always do your own research as well. So as always, if you found this information to be helpful, we ask that you please share this information. If you want to leave a comment, you can reach me on my social media platforms. You can reach me at I am Trey Evans. That's on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And you can also reach us at the show podcast Instagram, which is the People's Voice Podcast. The People's Voice Podcast. So as always, thank you for your time. Dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute. People's Voice.